My daughter refused to let me see my grandson, but I showed up at her new home and found out. The last time I heard my grandson laugh, he was 5 years old. He had wrapped his tiny arms around my neck and whispered, "Grandpa, don't forget my birthday next month." I wouldn't miss it for the world, I promised. I had no idea it would be the last promise I would be allowed to keep. 3 weeks later, my daughter, Emily, stopped answering my calls. At first, I assumed she was busy. She worked long hours, her husband traveled frequently, and raising a young child wasn't easy. Days turned into weeks. Every text I sent remained unread. Every call went to voicemail. I drove to her house, hoping everything was all right. The curtains were closed. No cars were parked outside. A neighbor eventually walked over. "They moved," she said. "Moved? Where?" She shrugged. "I don't know. They left pretty quickly." My heart sank. No phone call. No goodbye. No forwarding address. Nothing. I spent the next several months trying everything. I contacted mutual friends. None of them knew anything. I mailed birthday presents to the old address. They came back unopened. Christmas arrived. I still wrapped a gift for my grandson. It stayed under my tree until January. Every night I wondered the same thing. What had I done? Emily and I had never had a perfect relationship. After her mother's death, we struggled to communicate. Sometimes I was too protective. Sometimes she was too stubborn. But nothing had happened that could explain disappearing completely. Or so I believed. Then one afternoon my phone rang. It was my sister, Helen. "I heard something today," she said carefully. "What?" "I think Emily bought a house." I froze. "Where?" Helen hesitated. "I'm not completely sure, but I know the neighborhood." For the first time in nearly 2 years, I had a lead. That Saturday morning I drove 3 hours. The neighborhood was beautiful. Tree-lined streets, children riding bicycles, freshly painted homes. The address Helen had managed to find led me to a large blue house with white shutters. A swing hung from an old oak tree. Toy trucks were scattered across the front yard. My grandson lived here. I could feel it. I sat in my car for almost 10 minutes. Should I knock? Would Emily slam the door in my face? Would my grandson even remember me? Finally, I stepped out. Each step toward the front porch felt heavier than the last. Before I could knock, the front door slowly opened. A little boy stood there. He had grown so much. Taller, older, but those same bright eyes were impossible to mistake. He stared at me. Then his face lit up. "Grandpa." My eyes filled with tears. I smiled. "Hi, buddy." He ran toward me before I could say another word. He hugged me tightly. "I missed you." My voice shook. "I missed you too." For one perfect moment, nothing else mattered. Then I heard another voice. A man's voice. Cold, sharp. "What is he doing here?" I looked up. Standing inside the doorway was a man I had never seen before. He wasn't my son-in-law. He wasn't anyone I recognized. And judging by the expression on his face, he definitely hadn't expected me to arrive. The stranger stepped onto the porch, placing himself between me and the front door. He was in his early 40s, well-dressed, and wore the guarded expression of someone used to being in control. "Who are you?" he asked. Before I could answer, my grandson spoke first. "He's my grandpa." The man glanced at the boy, then back at me. "So, you're Richard." The way he said my name sent a chill through me. "You know who I am?" I asked. "I know enough." Before either of us could say more, Emily appeared behind him. The color drained from her face. "Dad." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Almost 2 years of silence stood between us. "I've been looking for you," I finally said. "I know. You knew." She lowered her eyes. "I did." My grandson looked from one adult to another. "Mom, why is Grandpa crying?" Emily swallowed hard. "Go inside for a minute, sweetheart. I want Grandpa to come in. Please." Reluctantly, he walked back into the house. The front door closed behind him. Only then did Emily whisper, "You shouldn't have come." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I shouldn't have come. Emily, you've disappeared." I thought something terrible had happened. It did. Her answer stunned me. "What do you mean?" She looked at the stranger. "This is Daniel." He nodded politely but remained silent. Emily took a deep breath. "Dad, Michael and I divorced." My heart skipped a beat. "What?" "It happened 6 months after we moved." I stared at her in disbelief. "You never told me." I couldn't. "Why not?" Tears gathered in her eyes. "Because someone made sure I believed I couldn't trust you." Those words hit me like a punch. "Who?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked toward the living room, making sure her son couldn't hear. Finally, she whispered, "Michael." I felt my stomach tighten. "My own son-in-law." Emily nodded slowly. "He told me you hated him." "I never hated him. He said you were trying to take our son away." "What?" "He showed me emails." "I never sent any emails." "I know that now." Silence filled the porch. My hands trembled. "What else did he tell you?" Emily wiped away a tear. "He told me you blamed me for Mom's death." I couldn't breathe. "No. He said you'd told relatives that I destroyed this family." "I would never say that." "I believe you now." "Then why didn't you call?" She closed her eyes. "Because by the time I learned the truth, I was ashamed." Daniel finally spoke. When Emily found out those emails were fake, Michael had already emptied their savings and disappeared. "What?" "He'd been lying for years," Daniel continued. "Debt, gambling, forged documents, everything." Emily looked at me with heartbreaking regret. "I wanted to call you every day. So why didn't you?" "I didn't know if you'd forgive me." I reached for her hand. "Emily, you never needed my permission to come home." She burst into tears. For the first time in years, I hugged my daughter. Neither of us spoke. We simply stood there, trying to recover the time we had lost. Then Daniel quietly cleared his throat. "Richard, there's something else you need to know." The serious look on his face made my heart race again. "What is it?" He hesitated before saying the words. "Michael didn't disappear. He knows exactly where you live. And last week, he came back." A heavy silence settled over the porch. "What do you mean he came back?" I asked. Daniel looked toward the street before answering, as if he expected someone to be watching. "He showed up last Tuesday." Emily wrapped her arms around herself. "It was just after dinner. I answered the door," Daniel continued. "At first, I didn't recognize him. Then he introduced himself." "What did he want?" I asked. Emily's face turned pale. "He wanted our son." I felt my heart pound. "He said he deserved another chance," she whispered. "But it wasn't an apology. It sounded more like a demand." "Did he threaten you?" She nodded. "He said if I didn't let him back into our lives, I'd regret it." I clenched my fists. "Did you call the police?" "We did," Daniel replied. "But by the time officers arrived, he'd already left." My grandson suddenly ran into the hallway. "Mom, can Grandpa see my room?" Emily forced a smile. "Of course." The little boy grabbed my hand. "Come on." As I walked through the house, I noticed framed family photos. There were pictures of Emily and her son. Daniel appeared in many of the newer ones. But one thing stood out. There wasn't a single photograph of Michael. Not one. The boy proudly showed me his room. "My grandpa taught me how to fish," he said, pointing at an old drawing he'd made years ago. "You kept this." "I keep it because I knew you'd come back someday." Those simple words nearly broke me. Later that evening, after my grandson had gone to bed, Daniel unlocked a small desk drawer. "I think you should see this." Inside was a thick envelope. He handed it to me. The first page was a bank statement. The second was a property document. Then came copies of fake emails. Emails that looked as if they had been sent from my address. I stared at them in disbelief. "They're convincing," I said quietly. "Very," Daniel replied, "until a digital forensic expert proved they were fabricated." Emily sat beside me. I believed every word. I gently closed the folder. "The important thing is that you know the truth now." She shook her head. "No, the important thing is that I wasted 2 years believing a lie." Before I could answer, a loud sound echoed outside. A car door slammed. Daniel immediately stood. No one was supposed to be here. He pulled back the curtain just enough to look outside. His face hardened. "It's him." Emily's breathing became shallow. "Michael." Daniel nodded once. He parked across the street. I moved beside the window. A black SUV sat under the streetlight. A man leaned against it, staring directly at the house. Even from that distance, I recognized him. Michael. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't waving. He was simply watching. And somehow, that was even more unsettling. Then, without taking his eyes off the house, he slowly raised one hand. In it was a sealed envelope. He placed it carefully on the hood of his SUV. Looked straight toward our window. Turned around. And drove away. No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, Daniel said quietly, "I have a feeling whatever is inside that envelope is going to change everything." None of us realized just how true those words would become. None of us moved for nearly a minute. The black SUV disappeared around the corner, leaving the neighborhood silent again. Daniel finally spoke. "I'll get it. I'll come with you," I said. We walked cautiously across the front yard. The envelope was still lying on the hood of the parked car that Michael had used moments earlier. There was only one word written across the front. Emily. Daniel carefully picked it up. Back inside, Emily stared at it with trembling hands. I don't even know if I should open it. You don't have to, I said. She took a deep breath. No, I've spent too long running from him. She opened the envelope. Inside were several photographs. The first showed Michael standing beside an unfamiliar woman. The second showed stacks of cash spread across a table. The third made Emily gasp. It was a recent picture of our family, taken from a distance. Someone had secretly photographed the house only days earlier. He was watching us, she whispered. Behind the photographs was a handwritten letter. Emily unfolded it. Her voice shook as she read aloud. You think Daniel can protect you. You think your father can save you. You're wrong. Everything you have belongs to me. I'll be back for what's mine. The room fell silent. Daniel immediately picked up his phone. We're calling the police. Within 30 minutes, 2 officers arrived. They collected the letter, the photographs, and copies of the fake emails. One officer looked at Emily. Has he ever threatened you before? She nodded. Several times. Did you keep records? Daniel opened another folder. Every text message, every voicemail, every date. The officer looked impressed. This will help. As they prepared to leave, he turned back. If he contacts you again, don't meet him. Call us immediately. After the officers left, my grandson quietly walked downstairs, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Mom, Emily quickly hid the envelope. Everything's okay, sweetheart. He looked at me. Grandpa, are you staying tonight? Emily hesitated. Then she smiled. If Grandpa wants to. I smiled back. I'd like that very much. That night, I slept in the guest room. For the first time in years, I felt like part of my daughter's family again. But around 2:30 in the morning, I woke to the sound of a security alarm. Daniel was already rushing downstairs. Emily grabbed her phone. I looked through the front window. The front gate stood open. Whoever had entered was already gone. But lying on the front porch was a small gift box wrapped in blue paper. There was no name, no return address, only a single note attached. Open it together. None of us knew whether opening that box would finally end Michael's game, or begin something even worse. The security alarm continued to beep until Daniel entered the code. No one rushed toward the package. We all stood in the hallway, staring at the blue box on the porch. Don't touch it, Emily whispered. I'll call the police, Daniel said. 20 minutes later, 2 officers and a bomb technician arrived. After a careful inspection, they confirmed the package wasn't dangerous. It appears safe, one officer said, but we still recommend opening it carefully. Emily slowly lifted the lid. Inside was an old stuffed teddy bear. My heart skipped a beat. I remember that bear, I said. Emily looked at me in surprise. You kept it, she nodded, tears filling her eyes. It was Mom's last gift to our son. Beneath the bear was another envelope. This one contained a single key and a typed note. Storage Unit 214. Everything you're looking for is inside. The officers exchanged cautious looks. We'll accompany you, one of them said. An hour later, we arrived at a storage facility on the edge of town. The manager unlocked Unit 214. As the metal door rolled upward, everyone fell silent. The room was filled with boxes, neatly stacked, labeled by year. One box read, financial records. Another, email copies. A third, video files. Daniel carefully opened the first box. Inside were binders containing bank statements, loan agreements, and documents with Michael's signature. The officer flipped through several pages. This is significant. Then Emily opened another box. She gasped. Inside were family photo albums that had disappeared years earlier when they moved. My wedding album, my mother's letters, my son's baby book. She hugged the albums to her chest and cried. Michael hadn't destroyed them, he had hidden them. As we searched deeper into the storage unit, Daniel found a locked metal case. The key from the package fit perfectly. Inside was a laptop. Alongside it sat several USB drives labeled with dates. One officer looked at us. We'll need to examine these. Before closing the case, I noticed one final envelope taped underneath the lid. It was addressed to me. Not Emily, me. With shaking hands, I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Richard, if you're reading this, it means everything has already started falling apart. I never expected Emily to discover the truth this quickly. But there is one thing none of you know. I didn't create this plan alone. Someone you completely trust helped me from the beginning. My hands froze. Emily stared at me. What does it say? I slowly looked up. There was another person involved. Daniel's face hardened. Who? I turned the page. The letter ended with a single sentence. You'll never believe the name. But the space where the name should have been had been carefully cut out with scissors. A cold silence filled the storage unit. Someone had deliberately removed the name. Emily looked at me with frightened eyes. Who could have done this? I don't know, I answered honestly. The police collected the laptop, USB drives, and the letter as evidence. We'll have our cybercrime team examine everything, one detective said. If there's another person involved, we'll find out. It sounded reassuring, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever had helped Michael was still out there. That evening we returned home. No one had much of an appetite. After dinner, my grandson climbed onto my lap. Grandpa. Yes, buddy, are you going to disappear again? My heart broke. I hugged him tightly. No, I promise. He smiled. Good, because I told everyone at school my grandpa finally came home. For the first time in years, I felt hope. 3 days later, the detective called. We've accessed the laptop. Emily immediately put the phone on speaker. What did you find? There are hundreds of files. Financial records. Yes. Fake email templates. Forged documents. And security camera footage. Daniel frowned. Security footage from where? From several locations. One of them appears to be outside your previous house. Emily covered her mouth. He was spying on us. The detective continued. We also recovered deleted messages. Did they identify the second person? Not directly, but one contact appears repeatedly under a nickname. What nickname? I asked. Partner. The following afternoon, the detective arrived with another surprise. We enhanced one of the security videos. He placed a printed photograph on the table. Michael was loading boxes into the storage unit. Standing beside him was another person. Only half of the face was visible. Emily stared at it for several seconds. Then her expression changed. I know that jacket. Daniel looked confused. From where? Emily swallowed. My office. What? One of my coworkers owns that exact custom company jacket. The detective leaned forward. Do you know his name? Emily nodded slowly. Yes. But it doesn't make any sense. He helped me after my divorce. He even encouraged me to rebuild my life. The detective wrote down the name. If he's involved, we'll investigate immediately. As he stood to leave, his phone rang. He answered. His expression turned serious. After hanging up, he looked directly at us. We've just received a warrant for Michael's arrest. Before anyone could celebrate, he added one final sentence. But there's a problem. We think Michael already knows we're coming. Because someone inside the investigation leaked the warrant. The detective's words hung in the room. Someone leaked the warrant? Daniel asked. The detective nodded. We don't know who yet. But Michael left the motel where he was staying less than an hour before officers arrived. Emily sat down slowly. So he has help everywhere. Maybe, the detective replied. Or maybe someone is being paid to pass along information. He left to continue the investigation, warning us to stay alert. The next morning, I woke early and found my grandson in the backyard. He was trying to build a birdhouse with a small hammer. Need some help? I asked. He grinned. Only if you promise not to laugh. For the next hour, we worked side by side. It reminded me of the days when Emily was his age. For a little while, the fear disappeared. Then my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. I answered. A familiar voice spoke. Richard. It was Michael. What do you want? I want you to stop interfering. You destroyed your own family. No, he replied calmly. Someone else did. I just took advantage of it. What does that mean? You'll find out soon enough. The line went dead. That afternoon, the detective called again. We traced the phone. Did you catch him? Emily asked. No, he used a disposable phone and abandoned it. But we found something else. What? A key. What kind of key? It was hidden inside the phone's battery compartment. Daniel frowned. A key to what? We don't know yet. Later that evening, the detective arrived carrying a small evidence bag. Inside was an old brass key with the number 18 engraved on it. I've seen that style before, I said. Where? He asked. I closed my eyes, trying to remember. Then it came back to me. My old office. Everyone looked at me. When I retired, the building had private document lockers. Each locker had numbered brass keys. The detective stood up immediately. Are the lockers still there? I think so. The following morning, we drove to my former office building. Most of it had been renovated, but the basement archive remained untouched. The building manager checked the records. Locker 18. He nodded. Yes. It hasn't been opened in almost 8 years. My heart started racing. He unlocked the archive room and pointed toward a row of metal lockers. Number 18 waited in the corner. I inserted the brass key. The lock clicked open. Inside was a single sealed file. Across the front, in bold black letters, were 3 words. Do not destroy. I opened it carefully. The first page made my blood run cold. It wasn't about Michael. It wasn't about Emily. It was about my late wife. And attached to the front was a handwritten note in her unmistakable handwriting. Richard, if you're reading this, someone has been lying to our family for years. My hands began to shake. There was no doubt about the handwriting. It belonged to my wife, Margaret. She had been gone for nearly 10 years. Emily stared at the letter, tears already forming in her eyes. Mom wrote this. I believe she did, I whispered. Carefully, I unfolded the pages. The first line stopped all of us. Richard, if anything happens to me before I can explain everything, please don't blame Emily. None of this is her fault. Emily burst into tears. For years she had secretly believed I blamed her for her mother's death. Yet here was Margaret's own letter, begging me never to blame our daughter. I continued reading. Someone close to our family has been manipulating people for a long time. I don't yet know why, but I have gathered evidence. Keep it safe. One day it may protect Emily and our grandson. Inside the file were copies of financial records, handwritten notes, and a small flash drive taped to the last page. The detective carefully placed the drive into an evidence bag. We'll examine this immediately. That evening, the detective called with urgent news. We've recovered the files from the flash drive. What was on it? Daniel asked. There are voice recordings. Of who? Margaret. The room fell silent. My wife's voice filled the speaker. If you're hearing this, I wasn't imagining things. Someone has been forging signatures, moving money, and trying to turn family members against one another. I don't have enough proof yet, but I'm getting closer. Then the recording stopped. The detective spoke again. There are more recordings, but one of them ends suddenly, as if someone interrupted her. Emily covered her face. I can't believe she was carrying this alone. The next morning, another breakthrough came. Police traced several old bank transfers connected to Michael. The money hadn't gone into his personal account. It had been sent to an offshore company. The registered owner shocked everyone. It wasn't Michael. It wasn't Emily. It wasn't Daniel. The owner was someone connected to Margaret's former workplace. Someone who had known our family for over 15 years. The detective looked at me. Richard, I think your wife's investigation uncovered something much bigger than a family dispute. Before he could continue, his phone rang. He answered, listened for several seconds, and slowly looked up. We've located Michael. Emily stood instantly. Is he under arrest? The detective nodded. Yes, but during questioning, he asked for only one person. Who? I asked. The detective met my eyes. You. He says he'll tell the whole truth. But only if you come alone. The detective advised me not to go alone, even though Michael had asked for a private meeting. You won't actually be alone, he explained. We'll be nearby. I nodded. If this ends the lies, I'll do it. The next afternoon, I entered the interview room at the police station. Michael sat on the other side of the table. He looked nothing like the confident man I remembered. His shoulders were slumped, and dark circles framed his eyes. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. I never wanted it to go this far. I looked at him steadily. Then why did it? He let out a long breath. Because I was in debt. I know about the gambling. He shook his head. That wasn't the beginning. It started years earlier. Someone offered me money. What for? To keep your family apart. I felt a chill. Who? I didn't know his real name. He always used intermediaries. He said your wife was asking dangerous questions. My heart sank. So Margaret was right. Michael nodded. I thought it was just office politics. Then the payments got bigger. What did they ask you to do? Convince Emily that you couldn't be trusted. Create fake emails. Intercept letters. Encourage her to move away. Every word felt heavier than the last. You stole 2 years from our family. Tears filled his eyes. I know. I can't undo it, but I can tell you one thing. The man paying me wasn't the mastermind. He worked for someone else. Before I could ask another question, the detective entered the room. We've confirmed part of Michael's statement. He placed a file on the table. The offshore company belongs to a business consultant. The consultant reported to a larger organization. What organization? I asked. The detective hesitated. We're still verifying it. Michael leaned forward. There should be one more piece of evidence. What? A safety deposit box. I rented it under a false name. It contains contracts, payment records, and the only document with the real signature. The detective's eyes widened. If that's true, this could expose everyone involved. As officers hurried out to secure the box, Michael looked at me one last time. I'm guilty. I deserve prison. But Richard, please tell Emily. I truly am sorry. Whether she could ever forgive him, I didn't know. But for the first time, the truth was finally within reach. The police obtained a warrant and opened the safety deposit box that same afternoon. Inside were contracts, bank records, handwritten notes, and a small black notebook. Every payment Michael had received was listed by date. The final pages contained the names of the intermediaries who had helped move money and hide evidence. Over the next several weeks, investigators followed the paper trail. One arrest led to another. The consultant who had financed Michael's scheme was charged with fraud, forgery, witness intimidation, and conspiracy. His company had targeted vulnerable people in financial disputes, paying others to manipulate families for personal gain. Michael accepted responsibility for his role and pleaded guilty. His cooperation helped prosecutors recover missing records and identify everyone involved. Months later, the legal battles finally ended. Emily invited me to the house for a family barbecue. This time, there were no secrets. No fear. No unanswered questions. My grandson ran across the yard and jumped into my arms. Grandpa, I laughed as I lifted him high into the air. I've been waiting all week to see you. So have I. Emily walked over with tears in her eyes. Dad, I'm sorry. I gently shook my head. We've already lost enough time. She hugged me tightly. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for it. You don't have to, I said. Just don't disappear again. I never will. Later that evening, Daniel handed me a small wrapped box. Open it. Inside was a silver keychain engraved with 4 words. Family finds its way. I smiled. It's perfect. No, Daniel replied. It's true. We stood together watching my grandson play in the yard, laughing without a care in the world. For the first time in years, the sound didn't remind me of everything I'd lost. It reminded me of everything we'd found again. As the sun began to set, Emily placed an old framed photograph on the porch table. It showed Margaret smiling beside all of us many years earlier. We're together again, Emily whispered. I looked at my wife's picture and smiled. We kept our promise, not the promise to live without pain. That had been impossible, but the promise to never let lies become stronger than love. And in the end, love won.